Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Renu Tyagi from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today we'll have a discussion on the module Paleodemography from the paper Human Origin and Evolution. The learning objectives of this module are: number 1, to define the concept of paleodemography; number 2 is to probe into the emergence of the paleodemography; number 3 is to identify the impact of anthropology on the historical development of paleodemography; number 4 is to define the contemporary anthropological theories on the ancient population society; and number 5 is to determine the demographic models of mortality and their interpretation. Now first let's discuss briefly about the paleodemography. Paleodemography is a subject which is simultaneously intensely interesting and devilishly difficult. It is intensely interesting because its subject matter is the life and the death of our ancestors. Paleodemography is concerned with the impact of the cultural and environmental changes on the lives of the past people, history of our special, without knowing quite a lot about the risk of mortality to which they were subject and about their ability to bear children to keep the group alive. The subject is difficult because of the nearly complete loss of the data needed for the analysis. Paleodemographic and archaeological finds indicate that some people lived at a site over a certain time range and tell us something about the number of the people who lived there by the house or the hearth count, for the instance, and by those who died there by skeletal remains in the burial sites. But they can never provide the range of the data that the demographer of contemporary people has come to expect. Census, the vital statistics, the cooperative information tell us when and where and when they did or didn't do things relevant to their reproduction and survival. Knowledge of past human population traditionally came from the studying the human osteological remains from archaeological context. Once the preserve of the paleontologist, anthropologist and archaeologist, it now attracts the biologists, geneticists, bioinformaticians and chemists with the fresh method and perspective that have made this field an exciting and multidisciplinary endeavor. Now let's have a look at the emergence of the paleodemography. In the past several years, anthropologists, archaeologists, sociologists and social historians have produced a literature on the paleodemography. The literature on the ancient population and their society is a long rumination on the questions of the nature and genesis of the social subordination. The question is not a trivial one, since the answers given it determine our vision of the future and our evaluation of whether or not it is realistic to hope for egalitarian society. The task of representing the field of the paleodemography has been enormously challenging. Not only is the field growing before one's eye, a truly moving target, but it has broadened over the years in ways that make a succinct statement of the contribution all but impossible. This discipline strives to construct a vision of the humanity from the past to the future. It is perhaps ironic to highlight a dissonance between the paleodemography and the anthropology in past several years. Anthropologists, sociologists and social historians have produced a literature on paleodemography. It is the fact that the discipline has been subject to prevailing mode of the thought through archaeological, biological and cultural that seeks to reduce the bias in the research findings. Anthropological hiring practices and the scholarly production of the knowledge and emerged as a reaction to a perceived androcentric bias within the discipline. Now let's see the definition of paleodemography. Paleodemography refers to the description and explanation of the biological adaptation, mortality, fertility and migration pattern of the prehistoric population within the explanatory framework of the evolutionary theory. Paleodemography attempts to reconstruct the past population structure using the samples of the human skeletons, either freshly excavated or stored in the museum collections from the archaeological sites. Its chief claim for legitimacy is that it provides the demographic information about of a limited, indirect and uncertain sort about the many human population in the past that left no written records. Paleodemography disciplines questions why people must adopt certain roles based on their biology, just as it questions why ancient society adopt certain other roles based on the gender. Paleodemography attempts to draw the line between the biologically determined behavior and culturally determined behavior. Paleodemography focuses on the physical characteristics of the past population based on evidences that supposed to be look the ideas that certain characteristics or interests are inherent and uphold and explore a vision of their society. Therefore, the field moved from being concerned with the documenting of the experience of particular ancient population to interpreting in broader patterns. Like other fields, in socio-cultural and biological anthropology, the study of paleodemography has been influenced by the other discipline during several decades of its existence, particularly from studying genetically. Considering these shifts and taking the human origin of the field into account, the designation that has most applied described this study of work is paleodemography. Now let's have a look at the theoretical orientation of the paleodemography. A more holistic approach stemming from paleodemography has provided a more adequate understanding of the overall picture. It is difficult to predict what theory will be like in the future. Some ideas are likely to be discarded or ignored and others revised. Scholarly disciplines and theories are very much the product of their times, and understanding how and why ideas have changed is part of what we need to understand. But some theoretical approaches and theories lead to greater understanding because they are more predictive of the world around us. To understand the sensibility of the population, it is important to observe the picture sequence of the past life. The long and the painful suffering of the human were made under several circumstances. One theoretical orientation will arise and may grow to popularity until another is proposed in opposition to it. Often, one orientation will capitalize on those aspects of a problem that a previous orientation ignored or played down. Paleodemography thought deals with the theories developed and contribution made by the different anthropologists. When a cultural trend is transmitted from person to person, from an original source to the numerous others, the idea of a contagion spreading an idea almost like an illness would spread through contact and interaction. Consider how hip-hop culture emerged from within the urban areas but is now known in all regions of the society, including suburban and the rural areas as well. Let's have a look at the principal concept. In principle, paleodemography also allows for the reconstruction of the demographic trends over time spans that are unattainable by any other branch of the population science. Paleodemography theory is founded on three main principles. Number one, early human settlement, something valuable to contribute to every aspect of the today's world. Number two, it's able to achieve their ancient people potential or gain full participation in future society with technical complexity. Next, it should work towards the social transformation from past to future. Now let's have a look at the methodologies. Using paleodemographic techniques, it assesses the effect of an epidemic on the paleodemographic profile of a population. In order to assess the impact of a mass mortality, comparisons are drawn between the mortality profile derived from a plague, burial, cemetery, and that from the natural attrition using medieval skeletal population. Because of the persistent methodological problems, however, paleodemographic analysis has achieved only limited credibility among the mainstream demographers. It is fair to say that the past paleodemographic analyses were often too crude to be believable. It is also true that recent methodological advances, not yet known to most demographers, have moved paleodemography to a former scientific footing. The most important such advances have been in the areas of age estimation, mortality analysis, and adjustment for the effect of demographic non-stationary on skeletal age at death distribution. Now let's have a look at the important questions addressed by the paleodemographic, which include the establishment of the methods for inferring, the past population structure, the timing of the emergence of the modern human demographic system, and relative importance of the attritional and catastrophic patterns of the mortality. There is a search for the adaptive explanation for demographic transition and the population extinction. In principle, paleodemography also allows the reconstruction of the demographic trend over time spans that are unattainable by any other branch of the population science. Because of the persistent methodological problems, however, paleodemographic analysis has achieved only limited credibility among mainstream demographers. This picture illustrates the effect of the climate change on the temperature and moisture. Now let's have a look at the contribution of paleodemography. Its focus is more inclusive and can focus on a range of the human population. Emphasis is given to the creative use and the management of resources for creative adaptation, human development, and sustainability of environments. First, the interrelationship of the exploitative or productive technology and environment must be analyzed. Second, the behavior patterns involved in the exploitation of a particular area by means of a particular technology must be analyzed. The third procedure is to ascertain the extent to which the behavior patterns entailed in exploiting the environment affects other aspects of the culture. Now let's see the holistic cultural context of the paleodemography. In short, all anthropologists of one kind or another are liable to investigate almost everything about the human beings, our emotions, our behavior, how people organize their living, our language, our religion, our behavior, and so forth. A good way to emphasize anthropology's broad scope is to say anthropologists are interested in all human beings, whether living or dead, are interested in many different aspects of the humans, including their technology, family, lives, political systems, religion, and language. According to the rise and development of the different social institutions as well as the social facts, art, religion, moral, and various other facets of the human behavior which are taught under the purview of the culture, the interpretation of which form the subject matter of anthropological thought. Now let's have a look at the paleodemographic parameters. In order to show the complementary nature of the anthropological and demographic approaches for the study of past population, the most important such advances have been in the areas of age estimation, dental development, mortality analysis, demographic non-stationary adjustment for the effect of demographic non-stationary and skeletal age at death distribution, reconstruction of ancient population size, and dynamics are based on the bioarchaeology, ancient DNA as well as the inference from the modern population genetics. Now let's understand the age estimation from skeletal analysis. Skeletal analysis can also yield information such as an estimation of the age at the time of death. There are numerous methods that can be used, and it is best to field questions of further interest to an osteologist or bioarchaeologist. Ages based on such features are subject to differing degree of the error arising from the inherent variability of the underlying processes of maturation and senescence. Let's have a look at the mortality analysis. For years, paleodemographers have used the skeletal age at death data to compute the life tables based on some simple modifications of conventional life table techniques. Though this approach is still a common one, the paleodemographic use of the life tables can be criticized on several grounds. Demographic non-stationary. Another shortcoming of the traditional paleodemographic life table analysis is that it assumes that the population under investigation was stationary, that it was close to the migration and had an intrinsic rate of the increase equal to 0, age-specific schedule of the fertility and mortality that were unchanging over time, and a balanced age distribution generated by those age-specific birth and the death rate. Only in this special case is the empirical age distribution of skeletons expected to have a simple, straightforward relationship to the cohort age at death column in the life table. Now let's have a look at the biodemographers. It is concerned with the understanding the complementary biological and demographic determinants of an interaction between the birth and the death processes that shape individual and population. The biological component brings human demography under the unifying theoretical umbrella of evolution, and the demographic component provides an analytical foundation for many of the principles upon which the evolutionary theory rests, including the fitness, selection, structure, and the change. Now let's understand the behavior modernity. Behavior modernity is a suite of the behavioral and cognitive traits that distinguishes the current Homo sapiens from other anatomically modern humans, hominins, and primate. Although often debated, most scholars agree that modern human behavior can be characterized by the abstract thinking, planning depth, symbolic behavior, for example, art examination and music, exploitation of the large game and blade technology, among others. Underlying these behavior and technological innovations are the cognitive and cultural foundations that have been documented experimentally and ethnographically. Some of these human universal patterns are cumulative cultural adaptation, social norms, language, cooperative breeding, and extensive help and cooperation beyond close kin. These traits have been viewed as largely responsible for the human replacement of the Neanderthals along with the peopling of the rest of the world. Effects of demography on cultural diversity and technological complexity should be understood. Paleodemography illustrates how natural selection and cultural selection weaken the relationship between the census population size, cultural diversity, and mean skill level, suggesting that one should not expect population size to predict the diversity or complexity of a cultural trait under all conditions. The concept of effective population size is central to understanding why the effect of population size can vary among traits that are passed by different mechanisms of cultural transmission within the same population. Now let's have a look at the genetic diversity among ancient population. For the study of the historical population, biological anthropology is usually based on the analysis of two sources of data. One of them is familiar to historians, demographers, and relies on data provided by various archival documents related to the demography of population in the past. The other concerns the skeletal data provided by the archaeological excavations when they are analyzed for the purpose of reconstructing the structure of the past population. Paleodemography is principally based on such data. Analysis of the extant human DNA has greatly contributed to the understanding of human origin and migrations. Genetic analysis of our ancestors may thereby contribute to our understanding of migration patterns, population affinities, replacements, tribal patterns, and family structures. Now let's have a look at the applied context of the paleodemography. The result is an exciting new interdisciplinary approach of the great potential, influence in and out of the academia that is not only connected with the professional concerns of the anthropologist, but also adequately presents the anthropologically analyzes the ancient people and natives. The aim of the paleodemography can be enumerated as number 1, to record the data for the future analysis, number 2 is to provide the information for related cultural studies and to verify the theories. The increasing use of the research method across the social science and humanities, the growth in popularity of the methodology and aspects of the analysis within the mainstream applied anthropology, it offers a groundbreaking examination of development within the field to define how it might advance empirically. Methodologically and theoretically, it cements a central place in the academic study both within the anthropology and across discipline. Trying to understand how various dimensions of the communication and so forth relate to one another in generally. It helps in understanding the cause and the consequences of the behavioral change. And finally, enhancing the understanding and appreciation of their differences and diversity. Through analyzing the fossils, comparing the DNA sequences and other methods, the outlines of the human evolutions are becoming clear. This figure illustrates the different drivers, responses and management prospects. The most important recent development in paleodemography from the perspective of the early 21st century have been methodological, not sustainable. But now, the paleodemographic methods have become more sophisticated. There is every reason to expect that important empirical results will be forthcoming. It is likely too that the findings of the paleodemography will be strengthened by the study of DNA extracted from the ancient bone field that has already started to provide insight into the ancestry and kinship structure of the past population as well as the pathogens that infected them. There is also a new and encouraging movement to bring archaeological settlement studies, long an established approach to the past population dynamics into the purview of the paleodemography. Another useful development has been the study of historical graveyards where the cemetery records or parish registers exist to cross-check the osteological results. Now let's summarize what we have learned so far in this module. We can now outline major and the historical development in the discipline of paleodemography and have a clear chronological development of anthropological theory. In focusing on the spread of the culture trait from one area and its acceptance by the another area, it minimized the creativity of the human being. Also remaining unexplained is the situation of the culture that have had no contact with each other or with any other culture, yet exhibiting similarities and parallel with each other. In fact, it provided the foundation for the development of the crucial ideas and concepts that were employed not only by anthropologists but specialists of other disciplines. In doing so, it served as a melting pot of the interdisciplinary critical thinkings. Paleodemography is the field of inquiry that attempts to identify the demographic parameters from past population, usually skeletal samples, derived from the archaeological context and then to make the interpretation regarding the health and the well-being of those population. Its chief claim to legitimacy is that it provides the demographic information about the many human population in the past that left no written records. By considering the studies of the human genetics diversity that indicates the temporary but drastic functions in the effective population size. Paleodemography is most concerned with the giving analysis to ancient culture and highlighting the various ways early humans have contributed to society. We have examined how cultural values associated with the early settlement, including the sexual division of the labor, to offer an account of the period reflecting on some of the dynamics that drove its human emergence. It also refers to the socially constructed and culturally specific behavior and expectations. However, how effective is it and how accurate are these results to know the age mortality and survivorship schedules need further exploration. Thank you.